On to our next story now. South African artists marched to the Union buildings on Wednesday to ask the president to intervene as the second phase of assistance announced in August by Nathi Mthethwa, the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, had not come to fruition. Many of these artists said they did not receive the once-off 6,600 Rand payment due to bureaucratic and administrative processes. Gabi le Roux, a music producer and a representative of the Trade Union of Musicians of South Africa, joins us now to talk a little bit more about this. Gabi, great to have you. Thanks very, very much for joining us on the program.
Morning, Leah, and thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to speak to our viewers.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure because this has been a very, very difficult time for artists. We know this. If there's one industry that has been very severely affected, I'm not diminishing any other industry, but artists, I think some have not earned a single cent since March. I mean, give us a picture as to how bad it's actually been.
Yeah, and I'll be very quick there. Before I start, maybe this will be just significant for yourself and your viewers. Today marks the 18th of September 2020, which is of course exactly the 4th anniversary of the loss of our very own Mandoza. That happened on the 18th of September. And for me as his producer, it's a very, very sensitive day, quite a sentimental day. So for me to address you on this particular matter, it has a little bit more meaning because when we look at our industry, people must understand that before COVID, we were not normal. We've never been normal. We're a very, very unprotected occupation and an industry as it is. And of course, when COVID came with all the lockdown and the closing of the economy, we were the first to be hit, and we're likely to be the last to participate in what can resemble a normal participation of an economy. Our artists have been stuck at home. Not only have they not been able to receive funding for cancelled events, some did receive, but by and large, the rank and file musicians who make your gig musician that do 2-3 gigs a week without contracts, without any sort of protection, it's made them extremely vulnerable, and most of them are now well beyond the point of desperation. So both the first wave and the second wave, from a process point of view, have been very, very dysfunctional, and we've had numerous problems.
Now, you had, in the introduction, I had spoken to the fact that artists were saying that with this second the second phase of assistance that was announced in August by the Minister of a once-off 6,600 payment has not been received. And to quote, it says, this is due to bureaucratic and administrative processes. Perhaps you want to elaborate a bit on that.
Yes, I'll be more specific. You know, we from TUMSA's side, and of course we're part of a broader group of like-minded organizations. There's about 20 of us that staged this march and this national protest action on Wednesday, the 16th. From TUMSA's side, we did everything in our power to assist our almost 2,100 members across the country to be able to follow the protocols and the procedures that were given to us to apply for this. And we were astounded by the amount of returns that they got. People mainly returned for things like that's totally out of touch with our occupation, like immediate tax, sort of tax clarification or tax clearances, bank statements with detailed entries of monies received in the industry, where most rank and file musicians don't even operate according to contracts, Leanne. You know, they live literally hand to mouth and have done so forever. And that is exactly what us as these organizations are striving for. When we go and say, Vula President, we don't mean just open the economy after COVID. Yes, that's our first priority. But we need to open up our economy for the creative sector to have a big, massive participation in that, so that our access to the economy is equal to any of the other professions and industries.
Yeah, it seems like a global struggle as well. I mean, it's just one that, you know, artists always seem to be struggling for that recognition and struggling to just get that piece of the pie, like you say, from hand to mouth. Now, let's look at the demands. You marched to the union buildings. Obviously, there was this this talk of wanting the president's intervention. What do you want? What are the demands?
Well, the first demand was to reopen the economy. We asked for 70%, just to get our artists working again. But one must remember, even at 70%, and the president announced 50%, that in itself, although we welcome that concession, it is still a 50% reduction in our potential revenue earning stream. So if you imagine after 6 or 7 months of absolutely not earning 1 cent, going back into the economy at the 50% capacity is still extremely, extremely perilous for us. And whilst we welcome it, we are cautiously optimistic that we will be able to move on from there. But we're only looking at hopefully well into 2021, where our artists will be back to the abnormal conditions that we had before COVID. So that's the one thing. The other thing, obviously, is that we're asking in terms of the immediate relief for the COVID relief funding. We want immediate provisional tax clearance for all applicants. Immediate, no questions asked, but that gives them a 6-month period to bring their tax affairs in order, to register, etc. And we do believe that there's already such a concession. We are in contact with SARS. We will be having a meeting with them in the next few days. So we are making progress. I think that we can be positive that our demands are being considered, at least by the president's office. We've had serious problems with our department of sports, arts and culture, just not understanding our occupation, and a mismatch between how they react and when we engage, or some of the organizations are able to engage, others aren't. And when we engage, they don't actually listen to the advice from the professionals in the industry, Leanne.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to iron out some of those problems.
Okay. So Gabi, let me ask you just a little bit in terms of that tax exemption and also the a tax clearance. What makes this industry so special? And I think it's an important question to ask, because every single industry and South African citizen must pay taxes. You've got to legally get your tax clearance certificate. And some artists do earn a lot of money. Why would they now be exempt? What's the rationale behind that?
No, I want to clarify that unequivocally. We are not saying artists must not pay tax, but because, and your first question was, why are we so unique? We are so unique in this respect because any artist in 1 week may have 4 or 5 different employers. Now, those relationships rely basically on a hand to mouth, as I said. We're not regulated. So that's where the problem starts. Our industry is not regulated. So there's no need really for contracts, because there's nobody that's going to enforce a contract or not a contract. There's no minimum rates. There's not a minimum wage. None of those are in place for our occupation. But because of that, artists, by and large, your average artist don't earn above the tax-paying threshold, number one. Number two, because they don't realize that whether you earn above that threshold or not, you still have to register as a taxpayer when you earn money. And I think that's answering your question, is that we specifically asked for that provisional 6 months, is for us to assist. And that's why we're joyful. We're going into some kind of a partnership with SARS, firstly, to do workshops, to educate, and to bring information to all of our rank and file members that it doesn't matter if you earn below the threshold, but you still have to be compliant in terms of your registration. So that is the process.
All right.
But to make that a requirement for funding was totally unreal and unfair.
Yeah, I'm glad we clarified that, because that would be sort of a loophole that everybody looks at and says, well, okay, that's fine. So what you're saying is this would be a time for people to get all of their things in order so that they are compliant, but to at least allow them to get that money in the meantime. Let's just quickly wrap this up. We are going to be getting a response to this interview and from the department afterwards, a little bit later on in the program. Obviously, level 1, we're moving into, the president has said now audiences of 250 indoor, 500 outdoor are allowed. All protocol obviously observed with social distancing, mask, sanitizer, all of the usual. Obviously, you welcome us. I know you wanted 70% capacity, but 50% is where we're at. I mean, is this what sort of the first step in moving forward, knowing the pandemic is still very much so with us?
Yes, we're clear on it. We don't expect anybody to expose themselves to the risk of contracting COVID. That would just be suicidal. But at the same time, we've been seeing, even with our march, Leanne, on Wednesday, we observed strict protocols. We were not only marching at union buildings, we also did a picket outside Parliament in Cape Town. There's a lot of media coverage of that, and in centres like Mangaung, Bloemfontein, and Johannesburg as well, and PE. There were marches to the municipal offices, and our members were absolutely disciplined, Leanne, keeping their social distances, everybody wearing masks, and understanding the problem that we face ourselves with. So I think we're all clear on that. And yes, we welcome the 50%, but we really need to get back to a more realistic participation as the restrictions are relaxed. And of course, we need financial relief. Many people have been kicked out of their apartments because they can't pay their rent. We had initial protection against that. That was lifted on the 15th of August, and you'll be surprised how many people were just brutally removed from their premises and are now literally out in the street or living with friends or parents, Yeah. So that's really the desperate situation that we find ourselves in, and it's untenable, Leanne. We have to get the president. It's only the president that can intervene now. We are exhausted. We have exhausted avenues of trying to engage with the department to help us through this. Yes, we'll go through the process, and hopefully they will come closer to us in the process of application. But the president is who we need to engage with now.
Gabi le Roux, thank you very, very much for talking to us here on the program. Gabi, of course, from the Trade Union for Musicians of South Africa, talking to us about the plight of artists, musicians, freelancers, you name it, in the artistic industry, and how badly they've been affected during this time, and hoping that the president can intervene. We'll be chatting to the Arts and Culture Department a little bit later on to see what their response is to this.